Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Pro Bono Goes Local, the kickoff event for Pro Bono Week. My name is Sylvia Soltis. I'm a senior staff attorney at Legal Aid DC, and I am a proud member of the DC Bar and the DC Pro Bono Week Planning Committee. Thank you to Washington Council of Lawyers and my fellow committee members for again planning an engaging and inspiring Pro Bono Week, which we will share more details on later. For now, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to a few individuals in particular for their partnership in putting today's program together. First, Christina Jackson from Washington Council of Lawyers, Nancy Drain from DC Access to Justice Commission, and Jen Massey from the Children's Law Center. Thank you all so much. This is our 5th annual Pro Bono Goes Local event. The event is intended to be both a celebration of our legal community's extraordinary pro bono efforts in our local courts and a call to action to do more to serve our district neighbors and those in our community who cannot afford counsel. Thank you for being here this morning. As Christina pointed out, please don't forget to put your name and affiliation in the chat. Our panelists will keep an eye on the chat and answer questions as time allows. Anything we don't get to this morning, we will try to address in a communication after the event. This morning, we're going to begin the program with a lightning round focused on hot topics in pro bono. Later, we will be joined by our local chief judges for their remarks on how pro bono in our local courts advances access to justice. We are so pleased to start our program with 5 attorneys from local legal services providers to give us an overview of community needs and updates in their specific practice areas and ways in which pro bono attorneys, just like you, can get involved. We've challenged them to do this in 5 minutes each. So I'm not only grateful that they agreed to be here with us this morning, but that they are up to the task. We'll start with my colleague, Faiza Majid, also from Legal Aid DC, to provide some insight into housing-related needs. Faiza?
Good morning, everyone. I will get straight to it. So first, I'm going to give you an update about the eviction landscape in the district, and then I'm going to talk about ways that you can help. So just briefly giving you a short recap of where things stood during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, there was an eviction and filing moratorium, and there was also increased federal funding through a program called Stay DC, where the majority of tenants who were behind on their rent received federal assistance. As of now, all the moratoriums have ended and the Stay DC program is also closed. We do still have local rental assistance, but that doesn't offer tenants the same amount of help as the Stay DC program did. Also, the DC Council passed tenant protections. For example, now landlords, tenants have to owe at least $600 in rent before a landlord can file an eviction case. And also there's additional requirements for filing a landlord and tenant case, such as a notice that needs to be served for a tenant prior to the landlord being able to file a case in court. Cases have really picked up over the spring and the summer, and filings increase every month. So for example, just the first 3 weeks of October, 877 new cases were filed in landlord and tenant court. In the beginning of the year, in the spring and the summer, lots of cases were getting dismissed because landlords weren't meeting the various new pre-filing requirements. But now that has largely stopped. Most landlords are meeting the pre-filing requirement, which means that a lot fewer cases are getting dismissed, and these cases are really moving forward. The landlord and tenant court has hybrid operations in Superior Court. So initial hearings, further initial hearings, status hearings, mediations, these are all virtual via WebEx. Evidentiary hearings and trials are in person. In practice, a lot of evidentiary hearings are still happening virtually, but they're supposed to be scheduled in person. Hearings are now scheduled in 1-hour blocks. And for those of you who took landlord and tenant cases prior to the pandemic, you'll remember that all the cases, like 200 cases a day, would be heard all at 9 a.m. But now that has changed. It's much more better for our client community. So that means when your case is scheduled for 11, Most often it will be heard at 11 within that hour, with the exception of sometimes when the court is running behind. Another change is that tenants are required to be served with the summons of their case at least 30 days in advance. And because of the changes with this 1 hour blocks, that also means that tenants just find out about their cases much more sooner in advance, sometimes 2 to 3 months before their first court date. And that is a big change as well, because prior to the pandemic, tenants would find out maybe like 2 weeks before their court date that they had an eviction case. So representation in landlord and tenant cases really matters. So 95% of landlords in the landlord and tenant branch have attorneys, while only 10% of tenants do. And having an attorney really matters, and it can prevent a family from being evicted. So with an attorney, a tenant is 16 times more likely to contest a case and raise defenses, and 8 times less likely to have a judgment for eviction entered against them. And representing tenants in eviction cases can also help maintain affordable housing in DC, and can stop displacement of communities of colors who have lived in the district and call the district home for generations. And, one stat really that's eye-opening is that since 2000, the district has lost half of its low-cost rental units, and over 20,000 Black households have been displaced. So the DC legal services community is great. We have lots of legal services attorneys who do eviction defense work, but we simply can't meet the need on our own, and we need help from the pro bono community. Personally, I really love legal services and doing eviction defense because you can work with the client directly. You can build a relationship with them, you can get to know them, and you can really help them solve a problem. And when you're successful in doing that, it's very rewarding, but it's also so meaningful for the client, because as you all know, when you have safe and stable housing, that allows you to, do everything else in your life. Safe and stable housing can mean like your kids can go to school, like in the same community, that you can finally focus on getting a job. You can finally focus on your health. So housing is very important. You get to see your case through from start to finish. You can take the lead in case strategy. You can build your litigation skills by doing responsive pleadings, discovery, pretrial statements, substantive motions. Legal Aid offers a lot of resources for pro bono attorneys. We offer mentorship for pro bono attorneys. That way you can talk through a legal aid attorney through substantive issues that you have in your case. We also provide sample pleadings and have recorded trainings. And I'm almost out of time, but the last thing I'll say is please reach out to Sylvia if you're interested in taking a case from Legal Aid and those law firms who are here today that are part of the Right to Housing Council project. Thank you for being part of that project. I don't have time to talk about that project today, but if your firm is part of that project, please reach out to your coordinator about taking a case. Thank you.
Thank you, Faiza. 5 minutes flat. That's amazing. Next, we have Erin Scheich from Bread for the City to discuss needs in the domestic violence area. Erin?
Thank you, Sylvia, and good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here and talk a little bit about Bread for the City and the pro bono opportunities that we offer. First, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about Bread for the City. We are a community-based organization that's been around for more than 45 years ago, and we have a number of different community-based projects and programs. So we do provide medical care, and we have a medical clinic and dental clinic for our clients. We also have a food pantry, we have a clothing room, and we provide wraparound social services. And then there is our legal services clinic. And we provide a number of different types of representation and different types of cases. As an organization, our mission is to serve DC residents living with low income and to serve them with dignity and respect, and from an anti-poverty and anti-racist lens. So a lot of the work that we do in the different practice areas that I'll talk about is really guided by that overarching mission of the organization to serve residents in DC. So I'm going to focus mainly on the pro bono opportunities that come from our domestic violence project. However, at the end, I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the other areas where we also offer pro bono placement for different types of cases. So with our domestic violence project, we primarily place civil protection order cases with attorneys. And those are cases that survivors of domestic violence will file in DC Superior Court, seeking protection from an alleged perpetrator of violence or abuse. So often they are, the protection orders are in place to implement a stay away order against the perpetrating party. So it is, a stay away, no contact, and no harass, assault, or threaten type of order. And the way that happens is folks will file for a protection order, and 2 weeks later, they will have a hearing in court within the domestic violence division before a judge. Those hearings are all virtual right now. They're slowly rolling back in-person civil protection order hearings, but by and large, the majority of the hearings are virtual right now. And these are the cases that we're placing with pro bono attorneys. And basically, we aim to place a case about 2 weeks out. So it will be someone who has already filed a petition for a protection order. We'll screen the case, place it with someone who is available 2 weeks later for that hearing date. And then we provide a lot of mentorship throughout that process. So we can help by, reviewing case prep documents. We can talk through strategy. We also have some recorded trainings and are also available to do trainings in person. And these cases are great for a number of reasons. One, I know some of the statistics that were on early as we sort of joined the webinar talked about how few petitioners are represented by counsel. And so this really does serve a gap and a need for representation in these cases for survivors. And for the attorney, it can provide a really great opportunity to get some litigation experience, case prep experience, and do that under the mentorship of one of our attorneys. So that's the main type of cases we place. We also have a number of domestic violence, domestic relations matters. So that's mainly custody and divorce. We have tended not to place as many of those cases because of the timeline is much longer and protracted. But for those of you who have time in your schedules to take on a case that will be litigated over a series of months, we do have a number of domestic relations cases that we can place as well. The domestic violence cases are good because it's usually about a 2-week period. And then there's a lot of other opportunities that we have, including our ID project, so helping low-income residents obtain identification cards. There's housing eviction defense cases and challenging illegal rent increases. And we also have pro bono opportunities to help folks with public benefits cases. So assisting with both applications and when there's been an improper termination of benefits. So for all of those matters, we are going to send out some materials afterwards that will, and I can put in the chat the email of our pro bono coordinator, Abby McNaughton, who can help connect law firms and pro bono attorneys with these opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. Next, we have Bradford Vogley from Neighborhood Legal Services Program to talk about criminal record sealing issues.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be with you all today. Thank you for tuning into this conversation. I very much appreciate it, and it's nice to see some familiar faces and names in the chats, as well as some folks I don't know. So great to be with you. And I'm very pleased to be talking with you today about criminal record sealing. It's one of the issues that Neighborhood Legal Services Program has worked on and focused on for several years now, among a variety of other civil legal services practice, including housing, family law, public benefits. But we really got involved in the issue of criminal record sealing by thinking very carefully and thoughtfully about ways to remove barriers to employment. We were thinking what stories came through our doors about what prevented people from getting jobs, what prevented people from having stable income, and the kind of background checks that were preventing people from getting jobs definitely came up several times, and it's an area that we've been working on ever since. So really, why is sealing criminal records so important? Well, one thing to think about is just how somebody gets a criminal record. It goes well beyond a conviction, and it goes well beyond even just a conviction for what someone might consider the most heinous or serious of offenses. Actually, anything that can be an arrest or any misdemeanor arrest is a criminal record. So you can have people who are very young that have never even been in court, but that were simply arrested and can have a criminal record. And the consequences, the collateral consequences of these criminal records are pervasive. They become part of routine background checks that are used by employers for assessing somebody for a job. They're used by landlords when someone is applying for housing. It can come up in all different types of family contexts, as far as formally engaging in events with schools on behalf of your kids and things like that. And so it's something that affects people's lives in a very extensive way, both in just the activities that are involved, but also throughout their life. As in the District of Columbia, there is not a system for automatically sealing anything. So I personally encountered many individuals with arrest and case records extending back to the 70s. So that's not uncommon. So anything from an arrest from a couple years ago to or yesterday can show up to just years. And there is a law that prevents employers from using criminal records at the outset in order to determine somebody's candidacy in terms of whether they receive a job offer. But those job offers are conditional, and employers are still allowed to use background checks. So even as there's been a lot of movement on this issue in the last few years, at the end of the day, it remains the case that somebody's criminal history is going to matter in their job searches very significantly. There's also an incredible disparity. So in the District of Columbia, there are maybe, we see more than 35,000 arrests every year. And about a third of those are no paper, what we call no paper. So somebody being arrested and the prosecution never bringing charges, right? Like arrests are a very common part of police work. People are arrested and never convicted, never even charged. And in the District of Columbia, Black people make up less than half of the population these days, whereas the population of DC jails is over 90% Black. More than 96% of the people in the Bureau of Prisons for a DC code conviction are Black. We're seeing our justice system used in an unfair way. Like if you're just looking at the racial disparity, it leads to a conclusion of racial injustice. So what we can do here is assist people to seal their criminal records so that it's not following them for the rest of their lives. What we do in our program is help to assess people for their eligibility. Unfortunately, sealing criminal records is not the easiest thing to do. Like I said, there's no automatic way for doing it currently in the District of Columbia, but moreover, there are a lot of disqualifications, as in if somebody has one type of thing on their record, it might prevent them from filing to seal something else. There would be occasions in which somebody might be able to seal their records based on their innocence, or in other cases, based on whether or not the offense has been decriminalized. In the last few years, possession of marijuana under 2 ounces has been decriminalized. There are a lot of people who've been arrested and convicted for that, who can seal their records. And this just goes to show that there's a lot of different ways to seal records, and it can get fairly complicated. So having a lawyer makes all the difference. What we do with our program is train attorneys to be able to assist clients to take these cases. We mentor those cases. We provide templates and other materials to assist people to get started, and we connect them with clients who need their help. So before I sign off, before I go too long, I just want to address a few quick questions that I routinely get when working with volunteers in case it's helpful. One is that the time commitment for these cases compared to other types of pro bono is actually quite small. Routinely, we see people working about 10 hours on their motion to seal criminal records. And then from there is a waiting period. So these are not cases that can just be open and closed immediately. It's the type of thing where somebody files a motion and then there's a process ultimately for that to get ruled on. And And then another thing I wanted to point out is that it is possible to have a hearing on these cases, although I have never seen it happen. And the vast majority of cases, the decision is made on the filings. And then finally, just wanted to point out that if you're working with attorneys who are not based in DC, we routinely have cases where we include attorneys on those matters. We think that this is a good project for people to work on remotely and include people if they're interested in volunteering. But ultimately, because it's a filing in DC Superior Court, there would be somebody who would have to be a member of the team who's ready to file it by being admitted to the DC bar. So those are just the few quick points I wanted to hit and say thank you again.
Thank you so much, Bradford. Next, we have Crystal Fleming from Kids in Need of Defense, also known as KIND, to talk about the needs of the district's immigrant community. Crystal?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me, Sylvia. So I'll go ahead and jumpstart and kick off and explain a little bit about what KIND does. So Kids in Need of Defense is an organization, national organization that focuses on representing unaccompanied children in removal proceedings. So we represent children who have crossed the border without an adult or caretaker. As soon as they are released here in the DC area, we step in and represent them in active removal proceedings, which often is known as deportation proceedings. We represent these children, helping them find ways to stay here in the United States. Often they qualify for asylum and special immigrant juvenile status. And to give you a little bit of background of the community that we're serving, about 95% of the children are from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. And they range anywhere from 2 years old to 18 years old. And they're all, for the most part, fleeing domestic violence, gang violence, and persecution and sexual violence. So we often step in and represent these children and are continuously looking for pro bono attorneys to take on these cases. Majority, and just to give you an idea of how many children are in the DC area that are in need of representation. So in 2020, due to COVID, only 48 children were released here in DC alone due to the border closing down. After that, in 2021, more than 300 children were released in DC who needed representation in immigration court. And now, just this year alone, as of August, more than 400 children have been released. In total, about in 2020, it's been not 2020, but 2022, more than 140,000 children are in the United States that need representation and have entered alone and are in active removal proceedings. What this means is that children have to go to immigration court without an attorney and have to represent themselves. So we're continuously trying to find pro bono attorneys here in the DC area who are willing to help. We have an extensive pro bono mentoring program where we offer trainings and templates and extensive help throughout the process. So if you're interested in taking on one of these cases, please reach out to us at KIND. And just to give you something to think about, 9 out of 10 children who are without an attorney in immigration court will be ordered deported, just to give you some insight into that. So please, if you're interested in taking on one of these cases, reach out to us. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank you, Crystal. Next, we have Tina Nelson from Legal Counsel for the Elderly to talk about the multifaceted needs of district elders. Tina?
Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm having so many tech issues this morning. But thank you all for having me as a part of the Pro Bono Week lightning round to talk to you about our services. So Legal Counsel for the Elderly, for more than 45 years, Legal Counsel for the Elderly has championed the dignity and rights of Washington, DC elders by providing free legal services and some social work services to seniors that are in need in our community. Our work addresses the most important aspects of an older adult's life, including housing, economic security, self-determination, and health and safety. We have impacted the lives of nearly 10,000 people on an annual basis while advocating for citywide reforms and laws, regulations, and long-term care facilities. So how can pro bono attorneys help us in this important and gratifying work on behalf of the elder population in DC? Well, I'm glad you asked. We need pro bono assistance for our various practice groups. In our economic and healthcare security group, we need pro bono attorneys to represent clients in simple and complex probate cases. One of the ways to address the issue of increasing loss of heirs property in the district, which is currently one of the mayor's top priorities, is to get estates probated to transfer title to our senior clients, maintaining both home ownership and generational wealth in families. Our tenant and advocacy and support group, also known as our housing unit, is seeing a spike in eviction filings. And though there are increased protections for tenants, the most powerful protections, which were Stay DC and the eviction moratorium, have ended. But the good thing is that eviction cases are taking several months to work through the system, giving pro bono attorneys like you the opportunity for training and preparation to represent senior tenants. Close to 90% of landlords in the district are represented, but only 10% of tenants are represented by counsel. Sadly, our consumer advocacy and homeownership preservation practice team continues to see scam artists and predatory investors target specifically older homeowners. Fortunately, we are often able to unwind those unconscionable purchases, those contracts, and or the outright thefts of a deed or home equity in these cases, but it can take protracted litigation. And so pro bono assistance is very vital for us to be able to handle these matters, and it can also be very interesting and rewarding work as well. LCE runs a unique program that we call Schedule H, which helps senior renters and homeowners claim income tax rebates. The rebates are often over $1,000 per client, and we partner with firms to run clinics to meet that community need. And lastly, LCE's hotline is always in the need of volunteer lawyers who are at or near the end of their legal career to provide advice, counsel, and brief services over the phone to all senior residents of the district. So these are just a few examples to whet your appetite, to get you interested in regarding pro bono opportunities in elder law. And so on behalf of the low-income seniors in DC, we look forward to working with you as you work with us at LCE. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. What an engaging and inspiring panel. Thank you to each of you. What I hope is clear from hearing from all of our amazing panelists is that there are so many different ways to engage in pro bono in our city. And whether you do it with one of the organizations featured today or through many of the others that exist in DC, these organizations are prepared to support you as you dive into a new area of law with training resources, mentoring, and sample materials. Now, our panelists have covered a lot of information, so rest assured we will share information on how to get involved in these and the many other pro bono programs that exist in DC in the materials that we circulate after the event. Now, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our chief judges, Judge Anna Blackburn Rigsby of the DC Court of Appeals and Judge Anita Josie Herring of the DC Superior Court. Both of these individuals have consistently championed access to justice and pro bono engagement. We thank them for their leadership and for joining us today. Judge Blackburn Rigsby, we will turn to you first for your welcome remarks.
Thank you and good morning. I really look forward to this event each year. In the past, and it's becoming more and more of a distant past, it feels like, we would gather in person and I would have an opportunity to see all of the wonderful lawyers who are joining us on this call this morning. But I'm glad that so many of you have taken the time out to participate in this event. And I want to thank you, Sylvia and Legal Aid, and also Nancy Dreen from the Access to Justice Commission for hosting this event. I was able to, and again, thank you all for your flexibility in changing the program a little on our behalf. We had a joint committee on judicial administration meeting this morning, and it ran up until just a few moments ago. So I'm so glad to be here. I was able to hear a few of the speakers today, but I want to say thank you to Legal Aid, Legal Counsel for the Elderly, Neighborhood Legal Services, Bread for the City, and Kids in Need of Defense for taking the time to share some ways that lawyers can get engaged in pro bono. Access to justice and ensuring access to justice is the #1 goal in our DC Court's strategic plan and has been for our last 5-year plan, and it will be for our next 5-year plan, which commences in 2023. This is a critical issue of importance, and sometimes we don't always think about the impact of it. We think of any person who needs a lawyer, one will be appointed, but sometimes we overlook the fact that that is only in criminal cases. And in the overwhelming number of civil cases that also affect the core needs of people coming before the courts, many people need but cannot afford legal counsel. And that's where you all come in. And I'm always so proud of the pro bono service and commitment to pro bono service of our DC bar. And sometimes I feel a little bit bad coming and asking you to do more, but more is needed. And even though we have the largest unified bar in the country, and we have over 100,000 attorneys barred in DC, the need is growing and it is greater than ever. The pandemic of COVID-19 and what I like to call the other pandemic of racial unrest and an increase in racial disparities in this country have converged, both pandemics, and resulted in greater legal needs than ever. And I know many of you in law firms and other institutions in our city, even though your regular daytime practice may not be focused on the Court of Appeals or the DC Superior Court, our local courts, there's so much you can do on a pro bono basis. And you'll hear more about some of the specific needs in the Superior Court from Chief Judge Josie Herring. But I just wanted to highlight for you that in the Court of Appeals, we're beginning to see an increasing number of people trying to navigate their own appeals. And that's difficult. In administrative agency cases involving public benefits like unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, more than 50% of those appeals are brought by litigants without attorneys. And an attorney would make a huge difference in assisting litigants in more timely receiving the benefits that they're entitled to. We also have an appellate mediation program. And with appellate mediation, it's important that both parties be represented by counsel. And in many of the cases that might otherwise be amenable to mediation, one or the other side is without counsel. And we have been fortunate that some of our bar members have assisted us on a pro bono basis in taking on mediations. And we're pleased that the DC Bar has joined with our court to help train people who might be interested in doing a mediation. One other way in my limited time I wanted to highlight where your pro bono service means a lot are taking on appeals. We have had a number of attorneys, both with the Legal Aid Society and with our private local firms, take on appeals, criminal appeals, civil appeals in the Court of Appeals. And that has so many benefits to the parties, to the court especially, but also to the lawyers who take on those appeals. It's an opportunity to cut your teeth in handling the briefing and argument in a case before our court. Lastly, I wanted to highlight that some of the court committees at the Court of Appeals and at the Superior Court rely on the pro bono service of lawyers in the community. Our Committee on Admissions, our Committee on Professional Responsibility are two of the Court of Appeals committees that I would highlight. And they're vitally important for the ensuring the admission of qualified attorneys to our bar, and also, unfortunately, for participating in the process of hearing attorney discipline cases. And that helps to ensure that lawyers who practice before our courts are qualified to aid and provide legal service. I'm not going to take a lot more time, but I just want to again say how important these experiences are when you take on a pro bono case. And I remember vividly when I began my practice and my legal career as an associate at what was then Hogan and Hartson, it's now Hogan Lovells. One of the most rewarding experiences I had was taking on a pro bono asylum case from a refugee from El Salvador. And that experience sticks with me to this day. So not only is it so vitally important to the parties that you serve when you do pro bono service, but it helps you grow as attorneys. And it helps you fulfill your obligations under our Rule 6.1, which requires that attorneys admitted to practice in DC dedicate a certain number of hours of pro bono service or commit a certain portion of their income to support legal service providers. So with that, I just want to say, keep on doing the good work that you're doing, but we need more. Ask your friends, your colleagues to join in this effort because when you see the numbers of people every day facing eviction, facing child custody cases, facing domestic violence cases without lawyers, it's heartbreaking. And we have the talent here, and we just ask that you consider donating some of your time and talent to this vitally important effort. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for inviting me to have an opportunity to speak with you. And you can watch our Court of Appeals oral arguments on YouTube. Yes, we have a YouTube channel where if you're thinking of taking on an appeal, you can see many of the archived arguments and any of the upcoming arguments. Thank you again, and continue your good work and your commitment. It's vitally important, especially now.
Thank you so much, Judge Blackburn-Rigsby. Judge Josie Herring, we'd like to turn the program now to you for your remarks.
I'm having trouble. Can you hear me? Let's see if I can get my video going.
I can hear you. I just
Okay.
can't see you yet.
Okay, and it says the host has stopped the video. I don't know whether that is. Let's try to. Okay, so I'll start it. I can start it now. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And so thank you for inviting me and the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals to speak with you all this morning, and thank you for accommodating us. It's so important that members of the bar lend their talents and their time to help people who are not represented in our system to navigate the court system. I'm so pleased really to welcome all of those who are participating in this week-long celebration. And thank you again for this event, hopefully which will attract new lawyers to the field of or the work of pro bono or assisting those again who don't have counsel, which will really improve access to justice for our system. We normally would have this in person. Of course, we've all been operating virtually for quite a while. And we thank you for all of the input that the Pro Bono Bar Access to Justice Commission and others have provided to the court as we've tried to revamp our processes to make things work better for members of the public that we serve. As we know and have seen over the course of the pandemic, people benefit obviously tremendously from the advice of lawyers and representation. And yet there are so many more people who are in need of help as the bar has stepped in the gap, but the number of people that need assistance of lawyers is greater, quite frankly, than even the great pro bono contributions that people have made here in the District of Columbia. As our case filings ramp back up to the pre-pandemic levels and as new legal issues emerge, the work you do to help those who are not represented becomes increasingly more important. Pro bono work is something that I'm personally passionate about, and I'm excited about your agenda for this week. I see the panelists that you have slated to speak, and I'm excited about the insights and the experience they will bring to share with everyone participating in this event this week, to give them a greater sense of how they might help those who are really underserved. I must also commend those of you who really, again, evolved and pivoted with us as we really try to transition to a virtual and hybrid world during the pandemic. And again, thank you for those of you who helped the court to really establish the system that we now have in place, which we call reimagining the court, that really has recognized that is our system, that there's a need for many to virtually participate in court proceedings. It saves time, it saves money, it saves expenses that people who are without counsel and without means certainly do not have. I must also say that the work you do makes it possible for us at the court to really realize our mission of being open to all, trusted by all, and delivering justice for all. We are grateful, that is myself and all of the judges, for what you contribute to assisting people who appear before the court, and we really applaud your dedication to justice. Of course, I want to thank the staff who put this wonderful event together and who oftentimes are funneling so many talented attorneys to our courthouse. You have flexed and coordinated in helping us to advance pro bono throughout the court. Your support of the judges and the attorneys and the parties are really important. We have a big pro bono event happening at the court today. Our pro bono and low bono committee is having a kickoff this morning to encourage additional pro bono work of lawyers who are able to join our ranks, who were not able to join it in the past. For example, those who work in the federal government and the local government are now able to contribute more to helping us in the court system through pro bono work. And so we appreciate all that you do, and we will continue to collaborate to make our system work better and to deliver justice to those who, without your help, will not receive justice, certainly to the extent that others with counsel will or would otherwise receive. So we're all in this together, and we applaud the work that you're doing, again, and your dedication to making our community and our system better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judge Josie Herring. We are so lucky in DC to have such strong and passionate judicial leaders. We are grateful for both our chief judges who were able to join us this morning. Thank you both for ending the program with your inspiring calls to action. Look out for more information on a pro bono open house happening this week at our DC courts. As I mentioned at the outset of this event, this is a launch event for Pro Bono Week. So I'd like to turn the program now over to Christina Jackson at Washington Council of Lawyers to let you know about what you can expect during Pro Bono Week and other ways that you can get involved. Thank you all so much for joining.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start by echoing everyone's thank you to all of the amazing pro bono lawyers in our community, in particular, the lawyers that we heard from today. They are just a small slice of the dedicated advocates who are working every day, both in legal services and as pro bono volunteers, to help as Judge Josie Herring said, Chief Judge Josie Herring said, delivering justice for all. Thank you to both our chief judges, Blackburn Rigsby and Josie Herring, for joining us. As you can see, they are incredibly busy, and yet they took the time to talk about pro bono because it's so very important. I also want to thank our DC Pro Bono Week Planning Committee. The hours that go into putting this together are both dear to our hearts, but are a lot. And so I want to say thank you. Please join the conversation, share your thoughts, look for pro bono opportunities and the events that we're hosting this week on social media using the hashtag DCPBW22, DC Pro Bono Week 22. We have a lot going on, and I'm going to share just a little bit of what we have coming up this week. I am so grateful to my collaborators on this program, Nancy Drain from the DC Access to Justice Commission and Sylvia Soltis from the Legal Aid Society of DC, and all of the admin work that went into this. I am so very grateful to all of you. There are my thank yous to the dedicated judges and lawyers who do pro bono work. I want to make a quick note that our courts are so very open to pro bono volunteers. It is a vital way that we are able to provide access to justice to anyone who wants to step into our courts. It also helps the judges in terms of docket management, and they are so very open and welcoming. No one is going to yell at you, I promise. So I encourage you to think about taking a case, and we are going to talk about the areas of most need as we go throughout the week. So stay tuned to find out where you can volunteer in the most of the high volume and sort of desperate cases. So Pro Bono Week continues this week with a program today in access to justice and family law. So this is one of the areas of great need. You can join us today at noon for that program. We're also going to be talking about environmental justice and where that intersects with pro bono later this week. That's tomorrow. And rights in retreats. So where are we post some of the important decisions that we have seen recently from the Supreme Court and other places. Where you can volunteer, there are lots and lots of places to volunteer. This week in particular, we have 2 veterans clinics. One is tomorrow and one is on Friday. Tomorrow is for women only, and we are looking for female attorneys only for that clinic. And then Friday, all veterans, all volunteers, let us know if you can help. And then in addition, on Thursday, we also have a couple programs meeting clients where they are. This is east of the river. An opportunity to talk to the judges in DC Superior Court, and you will find some of the divisions and branches in the events registrations. You can pick where you want to tour. And then we are going to have a small business clinic also on Thursday. I hope that you will think about joining our community, in particular doing pro bono. It is vital to providing our neighbors with assistance. Oftentimes they don't know it's a legal problem. And so being able to talk to an attorney, talk through it, is incredibly vital. You can register for all of the events, both Pro Bono Week and others. Read about our other dedicated volunteers in our Pro Bono Week profiles and find out how to volunteer. And if you need a training to sort of brush up your skills before you take that pro bono case, you can find all of that on our website at wclawyers.org. I am so grateful to all of you for contributing to this panel. And I will say one last, go forth and do good. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.